Trump is making safe streets great again, and Democrats don't know what to do about it. This is not a surprise if you've been paying attention for the last week or so. President Trump has taken it upon himself, and he has these powers. You'll notice even Democrats have to admit that because of the Home Rule Charter of 1973, the District of Columbia has a special status when it comes to federal oversight of the day-to-day, including things like budgets and, yes, law enforcement. And this is where they have boxed themselves into a corner, and I don't know how they're going to get out of it. Fundamentally, the Democrats, because their biggest voices in the media are pandering to an increasingly left-wing and delusional audience, they are completely disconnected from the realities of where most Americans are on this issue. It turns out that people do not agree with Democrats on things like, hey, the crime situation is not that bad. You're having all kinds of folks, Democrats, weigh in on this and say, hey, guys, now I'm not talking about the ones who are calling the shots in the party. I mean, in the media, saying, hey, guys, you're making this worse for yourselves. In fact, here is CNN's guy, Harry Enton, saying, yeah, Trump's crime numbers in terms of approval are going through the roof.
I think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way, way, way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to.
So what are the realities of this then? Democrats have created a situation where they just oppose anything that Trump wants to do, including saving lives and keeping people safer. And that's going to be a huge issue for them. Now, if you were to add, say, a Mamdani mayorship or mayoralty or whatever you call it in New York City into the mix, then you will have, I think, a twofer. You'll have a crime in D.C. national story that will be told all throughout 2026 going into the midterms, and the economy and the socialist madness in New York City that will become a story as well. So I think these are going to be very important storylines that will have an effect on national politics. And the fact that you have Trump with much higher approval than Joe Biden on the issue of crime already just goes to show you that this is an area of strength for Republicans, just like on immigration. And the reflexive anti-Trumpism that is apparent when they say they don't agree with this stuff is a negative, is drawing the fortunes of the Democrats deeper into the depths. As I've told you before, I lived in D.C. 2 separate periods of my life, once when I worked for the government and once when I was in media, and it was separated by over a decade, about a decade. And sure enough, what you ended up seeing all over the place in D.C. were people who didn't even go into certain areas of the city. Everybody knows this. And in fact, even Joe Scarborough knows this.
The answer to this problem for Democrats is not, oh, everything's okay, there's nothing to see here, move along. Oh, Washington has dropped 24% or whatever in crime. Well, let me give you some other numbers. The Washington Post took a poll in late April, early May. 91% of Washington residents say crime is a problem. 91%. 51%, it is an extremely serious problem. And John Heilman, we've had people before put this in racial terms. And this is, I must say, this is one thing that I think Democrats have gotten so wrong about crime. Let me just read the Washington Post here. There are stark divides among lines of race and income in the poll, with black residents and lower income residents significantly more worried about crime than white residents and those with higher incomes.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns out that pretty much everybody in D.C. thinks the crime problem is out of control. And here's the truth of it. If they do the enforcement, I know that Trump has, for example, Kash Patel, FBI director, already dozens of arrests of serious criminals on the streets of D.C., also illegals being removed from the streets of D.C. But when you look at the number of people that you would have to incarcerate to bring the crime down, I mean serious crime, down dramatically in D.C. is actually quite small. Any statistical analysis of this will show you're talking about a couple thousand people. But that's not a couple thousand people who you arrest. It is a couple thousand people who you are going to have to keep in prison for 5, 10, 15, perhaps life. Depends on what they've done. But repeat felony offenders, repeat violent felony offenders, they are responsible for the overwhelming majority of all of the violent crime in D.C. Someone doesn't wake up one day and just shoot somebody in the streets. This is such an important concept, and this is what Democrats refuse to understand, refuse to take into account. If somebody is involved in a fatal shooting in D.C. on the streets, the chance that they have been arrested many times, the chance they've committed many serious crimes before that is overwhelming. Overwhelming. You just look at the numbers. And once you're talking about a city that is allowing people to be arrested 10, 20, maybe even 30, 40, 50 times without spending serious time incarcerated. And I just want to say this. People say, well, what about reform? Does incarceration reform people? Will they have the skills they need to? Well, if they're not out in the general public, they're not preying on their fellow human beings. So that's a good thing. We can worry about the reform part of this after we've done the public safety part of this. And incarcerating violent felons is public safety number one move, the number one move for it. And I think more and more people are recognizing this, or quite honestly, they've already recognized it. It's just that the Democrats are waking up to the reality of, oh, they're not with us on this. Our sponsor here is Endpoint Lock. There's a risk you take every time you go online. Every time you log into your bank account or shop, cyber hackers could be secretly recording every keystroke. Using surveillance software called the Keylogger, they secretly record the keystrokes typed on a computer or mobile device, and that happens before any encryption kicks in. That's why you need Endpoint Lock, the ultimate keystroke encryption tool that stops keyloggers dead in their tracks. With military-grade 256-bit encryption, Endpoint Lock protects your passwords, emails, and sensitive data right at the source, your keyboard. It works silently in the background, no pop-ups, no hassle, just powerful protection across all your devices, Windows, Android, and iOS. Trusted by top cybersecurity experts and backed by identity theft and ransomware coverage, Endpoint Lock is your first line of defense. Go to Endpoint Lock Consumer, endpointlockconsumer.com today. That's endpointlockconsumer.com. Endpoint Lock, where privacy begins. And now let's just do a little preview of what's coming up with Russia, this summit, which, as I'm talking to you now, this will be tomorrow. Some of you will be listening to this on Friday, so if it's Friday, it's today. But the preview that I have for it is as follows. I think Putin is going to try to appeal to Trump, the swaggering showman, and give just enough to make it seem like progress is being made so that he can continue a war that he thinks he's winning, but have the pretense of he's willing to stop this war if only we would meet, or Ukraine would meet his conditions. I think on the other side of this, Trump is going into it already knowing this guy's been jerking me around. This guy, Putin, has not been a good faith actor in this. And look, Trump is a big ego guy, no question. I think he deserves it in a lot of ways, right? He's the most powerful person on the planet. That's just a fact. I mean, people can scoff at that, but Trump is the most powerful human being on the planet today. And Putin, also a big ego guy. And one thing that, this can be a weakness, it can be a strength. Putin is going to try to use the Trump ego to maneuver here and make this about the personal, two titans on the world stage. And, Donald, of course I want to be reasonable, and this is in Russia's interest, and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's his goal. But Trump, his ego matters here because he has been treated really poorly by Putin on the world stage so far on this. As Trump has said, I'm not even really putting words in his mouth, I'm paraphrasing, but he says beautiful things to me, and then he blows up hospitals. Trump doesn't like that. So Putin's in a little bit more of a spot here. Now, the problem is it's very easy for Putin to escalate what he's doing. He can do that overnight. For Trump to escalate sanctions, for example, that will take a little more time to kick in, right? Putin can blow up hospitals the next morning and show that he still thinks he's in charge and doesn't have to negotiate. Trump raising the economic costs, sanctioning India for buying oil, sanctioning China for buying oil from Russia, that can be effective, but it takes time to kick in. So we should all be aware of that. I think the other aspect of this is how much more can we give in terms of materiel, more advanced materiel to the Ukrainians so that they can raise the costs on Russians even higher. The cost that Russia has paid in this war in manpower, dead, is astonishing. Everyone that I know who has access to, this is the classified and the unclassified for casualties, as far as I know, are probably going to be pretty close. Everyone's saying hundreds of thousands of casualties. So that's people that have been killed or wounded on the Russian side, but it's hundreds of thousands. So the cost in human lives doesn't seem to be slowing Putin down at all, which is, not very much. It's slowing him down, but it's not slowing him down that much. But I would like to say the hopeful part of me sees this as maybe Trump can pull off a miracle here. I think that Putin wants to continue this war because I think that he believes eventually he'll just break the back of the Ukrainian resistance, and then he'll have anything that he wants, and he'll have Zelensky fleeing the country, and he'll get any piece of territory he wants from whatever leftover government there is in Kiev, and that's that. I think that's what Putin believes. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying that's Putin's belief. So for him, why negotiate anything? To me, this is more about, as long as the U.S. stays out of this, and the sooner we can stop paying for a large portion of this, the better. But this is a humanitarian mission. It's in the sense that we want people to stop dying. Putin is an evil SOB, no question about that. But I care much more about young Russian and Ukrainian men not getting their limbs blown off by hunter-killer drones operated by infantrymen on the front lines than I do about the geopolitical implications of this or that piece of territory in Ukraine going to one side or the other. We just want the bloodshed to stop, and I think that Trump is pushing for that very much. Our sponsor here is Preborn. Every day, thousands of women across our nation have this decision to make. They have an unplanned pregnancy, and what can they do? Who can they turn to? Well, right now, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in abortion. It's over 3,000 lives lost every single day. There's an organization that is stepping in right now to save as many lives as possible, to save as many tiny babies in the womb so they can come into this world and be little boys and little girls and grow up and have their own families. Preborn. Preborn has saved over 350,000 babies. Mothers like Valeria, who thought she didn't deserve to have a child until her search led her to a preborn clinic, and now she has a beautiful daughter. This can only happen because of you and your donations. So please support Preborn. I support Preborn. You should too. $28 a month can save a life every month, because that's the cost of one ultrasound that Preborn gives for free to any woman who walks in. $28. Dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250. Say the word baby, or go to preborn.com/buck. Show for today, friends. Shields high.